Hey, everybody, what's up? This is Talk to Me with Eugene Williams Jr. And as always, I have an exciting guest. I keep saying that. And I say it because it's true. Every time I talk to somebody, it's more exciting and more fun than the previous person. But I want to tell you about this particular young man. We met back, it would have to be in 1983, 84, the first time we ran across each other. I was a rising freshman at Ransom Everglades Upper Campus. And I think he was a year or two ahead of me. And so he was already kind of established in the Upper Campus, and I was just getting on. And we were both involved in the arts. I was doing kind of the musical theater thing, and he was doing the rock and roll thing. He was a great drummer, great percussionist. And so we had a chance to run across each other in different circles. And then also we performed together sometimes with the school band, what have you. And so over the course of time, you know, you lose contact with people, but you keep up with them through social media. You see what they're doing and see how they're growing and see where they're going. So let me tell you about this gentleman. This gentleman began playing drums in middle school, and later started over at the University of North Texas, majored in music over there, played in the band Hawk. I think I pronounced that correctly. And while there, he recorded his first album, first EP with them before leaving the band. Shortly thereafter, he moved to Los Angeles to pursue a full-time career in drumming and percussion. And from about December 1994 all the way through 2013, for the better part of 2 decades, he was the percussionist for a little group I'm sure you all have heard of called the Goo Goo Dolls. And I just want to let you know, like I tell everybody, I'm probably the Forrest Gump of all the folks you know, because of the people I've run across, the people I've met over the course of my life. And so today I have the pleasure of talking to legendary drummer, in my estimation, Grammy-nominated person, MTV Music Awards nominated person, Billboard Award nominated person with his group, the Goo Goo Dolls. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give him, even though he's a rock and roll musician at heart, we're going to give him a soul-trained Don Cornelius welcome. And we're going to say to put your hands together and give it all up for Mr. Mike Malinin. Hey!
All right. Hey, Eugene, how you doing?
I've been great, and I'm so honored that you would take this time out of your busy schedule to talk with me for about a half an hour or so. And I just want to tell people, you know, the best thing about true legends, true stars, in my estimation. And of course, Mike is too humble to ever say this about himself. And because, you know, we knew each other before the big times. But what I'll say about Mike is, the one thing I always remember about him in high school, and I don't know if he'll know that I remember this about him, never took himself that seriously. like no matter what he was doing, it was never that big a deal to him. To us, it was always like, oh, you're going to play this, you play at this party, or you're going to play at this venue or whatever. And he was like, yeah, you know, that's what we're doing, you know, so no biggie. And so I've always appreciated that about him. So the people who truly have talent in this world and are true legends in this world, they know what they've got, they know what to bring to the table, and they don't spend a lot of time puffing their chest about it. That's the type of guy Mike Malinin is. I'm just so grateful that he took time out to be with us this evening. So, Mike, how are you, man?
Oh, I'm good. Well, thanks for that introduction. That's flattering. Yeah, I'm good. I'm actually getting ready to move. There's a white wall behind me because all the pictures are off the wall because we're moving to Chicago in 3 weeks. So 2 weeks, okay. Actually. Yeah.
So you're currently living down south.
I'm in Nashville. Yeah, I've been in Nashville for about 11 years. Yeah.
Nashville. So from LA to Nashville to the Midwest to Chicago, that's a crazy trip. So let's get right into the interview. I want to talk to you about early on our time together. When I first met you, you and some fellas, one of my favorite fellas, a former football player, teammate of mine, Paul Acosta, and a couple of guys on the Ransom Everglades, put together a group called the Mixed Desmids.
That was our high school band, yep.
High school band. And I'm telling you, you know, he laughs at it. but everybody thought that that was the coolest thing ever. That we went to school with guys that had high school bands that I think were already getting, in many ways, somewhat semi-professional gigs at an early age, and doing a lot of jobs around the greater Dade County area. So tell me, Mike, how do we get from the whole idea of being a mixed Desmond in Pepper Grove to University of North Texas? How did that happen? How did we get to that transition?
Well, I just always knew I wanted to pursue music from I think I was about 11 or 12 years old. And I'm one of those rare people that was fortunate enough to succeed pretty well by doing that. Most people don't know what they're going to do when they're 11. I think by the time I was 11 years old, I told my mom in bed and dad, I said, I'm going to play drums for a living. That's what I'm going to do. And I just was always very focused about going that direction. So yeah, after high school, it was North Texas State at the time. It changed the University of North Texas while I was there.
Okay.
But North Texas State had had the biggest jazz program in the country. So I was drawn towards that. It wasn't even, it's funny you say I don't take things that seriously. I was always that way, and I'm still sort of that way. So even that decision was almost spontaneous, because I asked my drum teacher at the time, I said, where should I go to college if I want to study music? And he goes, well, University of Miami has a good program. And I said, yeah, I know it does, but I think it's, I want to get out there in the world. I think I want to leave Miami. Is there any place else I should go? And he goes, North Texas State has a good program. And I went, cool. And that was the only school I applied to. Just because, that's pretty much what made my decision. Before I even investigated it, my drum teacher just said, there's one. I said, okay, I'll try that one. So I went there.
Let's go for it.
So it was just, it's funny you mentioned Paul, because we just played together about a month ago for our 40th high school reunion.
Wow.
Ransom.
Wow.
Meet Todd Thompson, David Gordon, and Paul Acosta.
Yes, that was the full lineup. It wasn't registering. Charged it to my head, not my heart. But I remembered Paul, because Paul and I played football together. So that's when it registered for me.
Yeah, Paul was the one I was always in a band with, and I was never in a band with David. David pointed out that we had actually never played together until our reunion, because we were always floating around playing with the same musicians, but we had never been in the same band. And Todd Thompson was the same way. He sort of hopped around between bands. So I played with him 1 month and then not with him the next month and that sort of thing. But we were all, as musicians, we were all really active and just playing all the time. So it was a blast playing this thing. I hadn't seen Paul in 40 years. And we we had a rehearsal day before the show. It's like, hey, how's it going? And we started playing, and it was just like old times. It's like we hadn't skipped a beat. It was crazy. It was fun.
That's amazing. So let's go back to the early part. You said you knew at 11 years old that you wanted to be a drummer, that you wanted to get into percussion. So I assume there were some early influences. So at 11 years old, we're probably talking early 80s, late 70s. I don't know. Who were your earliest influences in terms of drumming? The ones that you said, oh, I see him, I want to be that.
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite, and I was a kid, still one of my favorites all time, is Keith Moon, famous drummer from The Who. He was, and his whole reputation as being he was so out there, so kind of this crazy showman and such a great, great drummer, but he really took the camera off of everybody else when he was playing in The Who. So as a little kid, I just looked up to that so much, and I still admire his playing so much, but I would have to say that he would have been the first one that made me go, yeah, this is kind of what I want to do for a living. And then the other obvious influences, I'm 57 years old, so right around 80, 81, the big bands floating around were AC/DC and Rush.
Yes.
So I was massively influenced by Neil Peart.
Okay.
Yeah. As most drummers my age were, we all wanted to play the Rush song. So that technically it was tough stuff. So I really had, focused on that a lot.
I would tell any young drummer coming up today, the drummers of that time, I'm thinking of, like you said, Neil Peart. I'm thinking of Keith Moon. I'm even going so far as to think of I don't know how you feel about him, but one of the ones that I used to love listening to was Stuart Copeland from The Police. Oh,
Stuart Copeland's amazing. John Bonham, all those guys.
Yeah.
Best rock drummers ever. I mean, I talk to young drummers now, and I just when I was at Ransom for our 40th reunion, I talked to the music class. And so I asked those guys, I said, what are you guys listening to these days? And they told me, they said the same stuff you listen to.
Good.
We're influenced by John Bonham and Stuart Copeland and all those sorts of musicians, because I think music, at least radio-friendly music, was much freer back then. Those musicians could just really shine.
Yes.
And I mean, I still listen to those guys play, and it just blows me away on some of those recordings. Like it hasn't gotten old after hearing them constantly
Not
for
at all.
40 years.
Not at all. And the best thing for me was, and I think you'll agree, back in those days, music was more interesting, just in general, because everybody had their own individual sound.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so you could identify who the band was just by like the first drummer that came on before the record even started. You knew who that particular band was. I'm not particularly sure that we could say a lot of the same things now, but that was the thing.
Think about it. Yeah, think about a guy like Phil Collins. Like the second you heard his drums, you know it's Phil Collins.
Yes.
A unique signature sound as a drummer, which is rare. Doesn't really happen much anymore. You're right.
Right. And it's something that's we I think we miss in music. So let's go to the next step. So early influences, 11 years old, you go to Ransom, you play in high school. Sometimes you play with different groups. We had a chance to cross paths. Sometimes I would sing with the band or whatever, and you do your thing over there with them. So now you are at North Texas, right? Now, how do you make that jump from North Texas then? And I know it's probably a long story, so take your time. But how do you jump from North Texas to California to LA?
It's not really too long a story. It's kind of at the time it was a regular jump for musicians to go to Los Angeles. So I went to North Texas. I was a student off and on at the university. I mean, I would go for a semester, drop out for a year, play semi-professionally, go back. This went on for about 7 years.
Okay.
So I was in and out of school for 7 years, I never actually graduated. I finally just gave up and moved to Los Angeles. But before I get there, going to North Texas, it just immediately immersed me in so much music because the musicians from all over the country, the best musicians from all over the country were going to school there.
Sure.
So all of a sudden you were just in this really amazing world of music, and it was constant. I mean, I would be playing 2-3 bands at a time. Sometimes people would call you up and say, "Hey, what are you doing? Can you be over here in 10 minutes? We got a jam session going." It's like, cool. And you go over there and you play with the next group of guys. And I think I was playing in a couple of bands that were doing fairly well. Played in a band called Last Rites for a while that got some notoriety. And we were pretty big on the local scene. But at a certain point, I was playing in 2 or 3 bands and barely scraping by, kind of a half living, and then working at a convenience store to fill in the money on the side. And then I had an opportunity to move to Los Angeles because a couple of musician friends of mine were moving there. And it just seemed like I was 24 years old at the time. And it seemed like that was just the thing to do. Because I go, well, if I'm really going to go for it, at that time, it was essentially New York or Los Angeles. You go to one or the other. Yeah. Nashville was very much a country music town at that point, and I didn't grow up on country. So I sort of took the opportunity to go to Los Angeles in 1992, and it ended up being a very, very lucky time to go there because music scene was still blowing up. I mean, it was a little bit past like the metal days, like the Guns N' Roses days were kind of dying out. And then the Weezers were coming in. That was that one. Mm-hmm. So it became a really like dynamic scene, and I just sort of floated around for a couple of years. Did the whole networking thing, played with as many local musicians as I could. A lot of it was just literally hanging out at rehearsal studios, meeting people here and there. And my big break, came with a band that nobody's ever heard of. It was a band called Careless, and there was a local band in Los Angeles called Careless, and this would have been 1994, so I'd been floating around LA for 2 years. Not much had happened. And the guys in Caulk had been calling me at that time, wanting me to come back to Texas and basically join them full time. And I said, "Oh, I'll think about it." And I got a call from a friend of mine, and he just calls me and he goes, "Careless just lost their drummer." And I go, "You got to be kidding me." And this is a band, like I said, a local band that was drawing in, 100 fans close. And so I got the guitar player's phone number and just cold called him. Sorry, I got my dog here. She's drifting around in my lap.
What's happening?
But so I just cold called them and said, "Hey, I'm a drummer. I'm from Texas, and I would love to. I heard you guys are looking for a drummer, and I'd love to audition for your band." So they said, "Okay." And that band played around LA for a while, and we only existed for about a year, but we're well enough known that everybody ended up getting gigs out of it. It was the strangest thing. So the guitar player in the band was a guy named Brian Baker, and he had a good history. He'd been in a bunch of DC punk rock bands. He was in Minor Threat, like one of the earlier punk rock bands out there. So he ended up joining Bad Religion after that band, and he still is in Bad Religion. And then Nathan, our singer, ended up being the touring guitar player for REM for the next 2 tours.
Wow.
And I got a call right around the same time from the manager for the Goo Goo Dolls and said, Goo Goo Dolls need a drummer. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, sure. So I got an audition for that. And it was before the band had broken. It was early 1990. It must have been like early January 95, I think is when it was. Okay. And they, so they called me and I auditioned, ended up being the only person to audition, got the gig, and that turned into a 19-year job. So when I joined, the first tour, we were touring around little clubs playing in front of 40, 50 people. So it was before the band broke.
Wow.
And it was about a year and a half I was into the band, it started to do really well. And then about 3 years in, when they put out a song called Iris, that's when it got big. And I guess that song still has a life of its own from what I understand. It's still out there. Yeah.
Yes. What's so amazing to me, though, is that talent finds talent is what I'm hearing from you right now. Because like you said, and I say it jokingly, but you say it realistically, you said, it was something where the most serious thing was I knew I wanted to be a drummer.
Yeah.
The other parts of it kind of just fell into place, but the focus was whatever I was doing, I was going to be a drummer. I was going to focus on that craft and that skill and hone it. Mm-hmm. Wherever I did it, it was going to be something to behold. So it's always,
it's a grind. It's like anything else. I mean, you really have to, I always tell young musicians this now. It's like, you want to succeed, you've got to be ready to work. I mean, I didn't make a living full-time playing music till I was 27 years old. So up until then, at one point in Los Angeles, I was literally living in a 1-bedroom apartment with 2 roommates. So one roommate paid half the rent. He had the room, and then me and another guy shared the front room. And we, so our rent was $200, and I was working at a vintage clothing store selling used clothes, and every dime that I had went into the rehearsal spaces, went into doing music. And so you kept going. You just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. So it's not as if it's you just go, oh, I'm going to be a drummer, and the next day you're making a living. It doesn't work like that. So I ended up being very fortunate that I joined a band that started to do really well. And like I say, the 90s were such a good time to be in LA. There was so much work available that almost everybody I know who really pursued it succeeded in some capacity for at least a little while. Joined some band that was touring, put out records, everything. It was really just a great time to be there.
So would you say, you said it, you kind of got with the group in 95. Would you say you kind of broke, let's say, I would say, if I remember correctly, when I first heard my first knowledge of the Goo Goo Dolls, you broke around 98, you'd say? Was that when you broke?
Right about 98. Mm-hmm.
1998? And so it was still, that in entertainment time, that's still a relatively short time to go from, your overall career had been pretty much your entire life, of course.
Yeah. Well, the band had been around. I was the second drummer in that band. The band had been around for 9 years before me. So it took them quite a while to break. So they'd been doing it for over a decade by the time they started to succeed. Yeah.
So, Mike, you're in the band, you're with the Goo Goo Dolls, it's 98, things are taking off. So my question to you would be this: what are some of the biggest benefits or drawbacks of being with a band that was that big for that long at that time in your life?
That was great. I mean, I was just turning 30 years old, and all of a sudden getting to travel the world, play music. It was, you always ask yourself, when do you think you've succeeded? And everybody always pushes the envelope, and they want more, and they want more, and they want more. It's for me, I always thought to myself, I said, if I ever go to Europe to play music and somebody else paid for me to get there, then everything else is icing on the cake. So I remember in 90, it was before that, it was actually late 95 that we flew to London. And I remember setting up at this little club in London, had a small little crowd. We started the first song, and I go, cool, if nothing else ever happens to me again, I'm in London playing drums. This is incredible. So after that, everything was gravy. But with the band succeeding, I mean, it was awesome. It became a full-time career. Got to record on some records, and like I say, travel the world. I mean, I got to play everywhere. We didn't do a whole lot of international traveling in my time with the band. England was about was about it. We'd go to England fairly regularly, but got to go to Japan a couple of times, Australia a couple of times, which is amazing. Never went to South America. I'm always sorry about that. And we didn't do a whole lot of European touring. So the bulk of our career was definitely in the U.S. and Canada. So we just played all over the U.S. and Canada over and over. But yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. It as with any career, it has ups and downs.
Sure.
I'm essentially, I've always been. This is one of the things about art in general. It's most people don't really do it 100% on their own terms. So it is a job. I mean, I'm a hired gun musician, so
Right.
That's kind of what I always was. So you don't really have a whole lot of say in what's going on, and so sometimes it does hit you that it's just a job, but it's a great job if you can get it.
Oh yeah, it's a great gig if you can get it. So now, you go over time. You're with that band for close to 2 decades, if not 2 decades. And then, as all things happen, bands move on, break up, lineups change, what have you. And then you're in a new phase of life. You make a pivot, and you pivot from rock music to end up being a percussionist for country legend Tanya Tucker. Tell me what that was like.
Well, it was in 2013 when that gig came to an end for various reasons. My wife goes, well, what do we do now? Where do you want to go? And I said, well, it's time to get out of Los Angeles. And at the time, it's probably still this way now, but at the time, the standard routine for aging musicians was to go to Nashville. Because when you go to Nashville and you enter that scene, the age doesn't become such a factor. In the rock world, once you're in your 40s, it becomes a little bit odd. And everybody in LA, I wasn't going to be one of those guys dyeing my hair and lying about my age and saying I was 29. It's like, no, I was in my mid 40s at the time.
Right.
So we just went to Nashville. And I kind of went to Nashville without knowing many people here at all. I knew a few, and it was interesting because the first thing I did when I got to Nashville was got a job, and I hadn't had a day gig in almost 20 years. So I took a delivery job for DHL, and ended up being one of the greatest things I could ever have done, because all of a sudden there was no music, it was no industry. I was just driving a van, taking packages to Kentucky every day, hanging out at work. Nobody knew I was a musician, and it was almost like therapy. I go, this is great. I really just needed this. It was kind of a break from the whole music scene. But I did that for almost a year, and then really started pounding the pavement. Said, well, I didn't move to Nashville to work for DHL. I moved to Nashville to pursue music some more. So I just started pounding the pavement and trying to find a gig. And I got a phone call one day. Things happen out here in Nashville pretty quickly, faster than they do in most cities. So I got a phone call from Tanya Tucker's manager, because I had met with him before, saying, well, Tanya needs a drummer. Are you interested? And I said, sure. And it was essentially a very short conversation. And he goes, okay, rehearsals start on Monday and the first show's Friday. No audition, anything. You just they throw you in. So I basically showed up at rehearsal, and that's where I first met Tanya. Ran through the set a couple of times, and by that weekend we were playing shows. So it wasn't a plan for me to hook up with a country legend like her, but it was funny when I got the call, because I talk about the how it's where aging musicians move, and Tanya's 10 years older than I am. So as soon as I got the call, my first thought in my head was, excellent, age appropriate gig. And it was a learning curve for me. So it's a completely different style of playing, and I think in a lot of ways it made me into a much more versatile musician, because I knew nothing about country music. I kind of had to spend my first couple of weeks lying to her and lying to the band, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about when you're referencing these Merle Haggard songs and George Jones songs. I know. It's like I had no idea what I was talking about. So just kind of did the wing it thing, and then I ended up touring with her for 7 years, and it was great. And then I got into COVID hit, unfortunately, and she had a real big momentum thing going, and that sort of cut off all the momentum. And now I got diagnosed a couple of years ago with sorry, got to put the dog down.
Okay.
I got diagnosed a couple of years ago with a medical condition called musician's dystonia, which I had never heard of. But I had now I'm discovering it's more common than I thought. Anyway, that's why I ended up losing the Tanya gig, because I had to sub out a bunch of dates, and I don't hold it against her at all. It's just, the machine goes on. So I literally couldn't play drums for almost a year. I'd say 9 months or so. Couldn't play at all. And musician's dystonia it's dystonia in general. It happens to all sorts of people that do repetitive motion things. I've read of athletes having runner's dystonia and things like this. It's from what I understand, it's just some kind of neurological disorder where your limbs or something doesn't function the way you want it to. So my right arm started to have really bad issues, and I couldn't control my right arm. My right arm, in a nutshell, like when you're holding your arms, this is resting position for your arms. If I can get them a picture. My right arm wanted to do this. It wanted to flip over. So my resting position was all of a sudden this. So when I'm trying to play drums, my arm would literally start flipping over, and I couldn't control it.
You had to bring it back over. And it was hard to do.
Yeah, so it was the scariest thing. And it got to a point, I was rehearsing with a different band. It got to a point where I couldn't play drums. I literally had to stop, and I go, I can't play. My arm doesn't work. So I went and saw the doctor, got the diagnosis pretty quickly, and now I get treatment. I've been getting treatment at Vanderbilt. When I go up to Chicago, I'll be getting treatment at Northwestern, but it's a lifelong thing. So they give me shots in my arm. The short story is I get shots that try to weaken the muscles doing the wrong thing and have the right muscles take over. And it's still a battle. So that's what I've been dealing with over the last couple of years. So I haven't been playing a lot. I was playing with a local band here called the FBR, which stands for Famous Blue Raincoat, kind of an Americana band. Great band, one of my favorite bands I've ever been in. And they've all become really good friends of mine. And I reluctantly had to leave that gig recently just because we're moving to Chicago. So I had to put in my notice for that. And now I'm going to be in the next phase of my life up there. And I'm not sure yet whether I'm continuing playing or not. I'm kind of, for the time being, calling myself semi-retired. So
yes, we all know that phrase in this stage in our life. We all know that phrase. I'm excited about the fact that, number one, that you have maintained, even in the face of this difficulty, it appears it's still a very positive attitude, an attitude of gratitude for the things that you have accomplished, that you've been able to do. So are you thinking about down the line in this semi-retirement? Are you thinking about maybe doing some drum instruction? I mean, what's the pivot? What's the pivot? Do we go into education? Do we go into production? What do we do?
Yeah, a friend of mine has already reached out to me about those sorts of things, about traveling and doing some drum clinics with him. And I would love to get into that more. I've taught over the years off and on, but I guess I've reached the point now. It's almost like it's time to pass the baton to the next generation type thing.
Yeah.
So hopefully use some of my expertise just from years of doing it to teach kids how to audition and how to go forward with a career in music, because it can be a battle. It can be a struggle. It's good and bad,
the thing about it is, when you are talking to somebody, number one, that number two, that is talented, number three, that you are just engrossed in the conversation, the half hour slips by very quickly. We're coming up on the end. Now, what I want to ask you, going into the future, we've talked about the early career, the early influences, the time with the smaller bands, the time with the bigger bands, then the pivot from rock to country. And now we're talking about what do we do after the performative years. So, Mike, where do you see yourself in 5-10 years when you consider all the things you've accomplished and all the things you've done up to this point?
Hopefully living a happy life in Chicago, raising my kids. I'm reaching out to musicians there now, so it's all kind of exciting, because I've stopped all my projects here. I've walked away from all of them because I'm moving. So I'm kind of going up there fully unemployed, which is exciting and scary at the same time. So I've made a few connections, and I'm starting to talk to people about possibly playing, possibly doing other aspects of the music industry, teaching, as you said. I don't know. We'll sort of make it up as we go along. But I always sort of jokingly say that, but it's kind of true. I feel like I've just sort of snuck through life cheating anyway. So I'll continue to make it up as I go along and see what happens.
Well, like I said, the thing I remember is you never took things too seriously, but the only thing that I knew you did take seriously was your dedication to the craft and your talent. And when you focus like that, you were then able to compensate in other ways and slide through other things because you have that talent and that knowledge you can hold on to. And I'm just so grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule. I know you're making moves and everything now, another pivot in life. Take time to talk to me. And I wish you the best in every single thing you are doing and trying to pursue. Best for you and your family, your career. And I can only imagine the young people that, if you decide to go full board in education, the young people that will benefit from your knowledge and just your temperament, because you'd be the perfect teacher. You know how to get the best out of people without jumping down their throat. Always like that about you. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Talk to Me with Eugene Williams Jr. And my guest has been the fantastic, the legendary, the percussionist, Mike Malinin. And we're so honored to have him. Everybody be blessed and have a fantastic evening.